we're diving through the massive Season 1 patch notes Treyarch just dropped for Black Ops 6 Zombies, which include some huge changes, including massive buffs to assault rifles and launchers, buffs and changes to field upgrades and augments, changes to Dark Ops challenges, and so much more. There is a ton to dive into, so let's jump in. Diving straight in, they first made some significant changes and fixes to both Terminus and Liberty Falls when it comes to certain mechanics of the maps, where for Terminus we have an issue addressed where your defuse progress during the bomb step sometimes wouldn't save if you stopped defusing on solo, which is a very big issue. Completely fixed. They've addressed an issue where if you jumped in a Casimir grenade after beating the Easter egg, it would teleport you back to the boss arena and you would go down. We've also addressed an issue where loading into a save game after unlocking Pack-a-Punch could cause some doors to have inconsistent collision. This is where any doors that you might have opened suddenly have an invisible barrier in front of them where you can't enter, or you might have a death barrier by going inside. That should all be fixed now. They've also addressed an issue in the main Easter egg where connecting both node connectors at the same time would cause overlapping voice lines, and they've changed the location of an ammo cache on the seaside path. Pretty random change there, but an ammo box is now in a completely new area on the map. And for Liberty Falls, they've updated it now, so the first mangler whose arm is blown off will always drop a mangler cannon, which is fantastic towards getting the jet gun instead of only the first mangler that spawns. So now, whenever the first mangler whose arm is blown off, no matter what, will always drop a mangler cannon, which I think is a fantastic change, making it a lot more friendly for people to be able to get a mangler cannon more excessively to do the jet gun step to get that wiring part. And they've resolved an issue where Blanchard would not be present during some dialogue, and we always need more Blanchard in our lives, am I right? But what is very surprising is if we scroll down a little bit, they mentioned that there was recent changes to assault rifles and zombies that were giving them an unintended carryover from a global weapon tuning pass in multiplayer, and they don't intend to inherit all multiplayer weapon tuning without looking at how it affects zombies. They've corrected this, and they've actually buffed every single assault rifle to increase its damage performance in zombies. Their Pack-a-Punch base damage has been increased, and the overall critical damage has been increased. So whilst as we look through specifically each weapon and its changes, you may see the word decrease, the performance is still increased overall. And the HE1 launcher has gotten a buff to become more useful at stopping hordes of zombies, and when packed, it will now have more stock ammo and a larger explosion. Who would have thought that? So if you go down, we have the AMES 85, where before patch it was doing all of this, but now after the patch, its critical damage has gone up by 20, its multiplier has gone up by 20, and its bullet damage has gone up by 3. For the AK-74U, both its bullet damage, the crit multiplier stayed the same, but the crit damage has gone up. The AS Val, which is one of my favorite and most damaging ARs in the entire game, if we look, the bullet damage has gone up, the crit multiplier is slightly decreased, but that crit damage has increased, so this should still be an incredibly powerful AR. The Model L has also seen an increase literally across the board, across bullet damage, crit multiplier, and crit damage. The XM4 has also seen increases across the board to its bullet damage and its crit damage, but that crit multiplier has stayed the same. And for the GPR91, we've seen that it has had a substantial increase in its bullet damage. Its crit multiplier has gone down, but that crit damage has also gone up substantially. So this could now also be one of the strongest ARs in the game. And then the HE1 launcher, which is just an absolute meme at this point. It's incredible, along with the Sigma. I don't know why the Sigma didn't get any love here, but there is some crazy adjustments to this where the stock ammo has been increased from 5 to 11 now. The explosion radius has increased from 0.4 to 3.25 meters, which is huge, nearly doubled. And then they've also changed some explosion damage adjustments where they've lowered the inner explosion damage, but then they've increased the mid and the outer. So this thing should be so much better now. It's crazy. But then we get on to the bugs fixes, and there is quite a lot. They've addressed an issue where camos not being applied to zombie builds. They closed an exploit that allowed players to have 3 weapons. They addressed an issue where wall by rarity would reset when loading into a save, and this is something that was such an annoying thing where every time if you're on round 30 the guns would go back to green rarity, which was so frustrating. And they've addressed an issue where yellow damage numbers would appear when hitting a critical spot with the ray gun. Now let's move over to perks. So they've made some pretty big changes to some of the augments for perks, with quick revive with the dying wish augment, where they've addressed an issue where dying wish could activate when diving from large heights while protected from fall damage. That's an obvious bug, so that's fantastic to see fixed. Elemental Pop has had an issue addressed where it would prevent normal ammo mod activations, which if you have that augment on, that is very frustrating. And for Juggernog, they specifically fixed Turtle Shell. Well, it would now apply damage mitigation when being grabbed by an amalgam. Normally, if you had Turtle Shell on and an amalgam grabbed you, it'd be an insta down, which is absolutely unfair. So it's fantastic that has now been fixed, so you can now run it again. And for PhD Flopper, they've addressed an issue where diving onto an elevated or inclined surface would not activate the perk, so it should now activate a lot more often. Going into Gobblegums, there was an issue with near-death experience that prevented players revived by it from keeping all of their perks. This is something that I noticed on launch day. Very happy that that's now been fixed. And for field upgrades, they've actually done some pretty big changes here to Energy Mine and Dark Flare. So on Energy Mine, they've adjusted its description to no longer say it deals electrical damage to accurately reflect the damage type, which, it's not electrical damage, it's something completely different. It's more lightning damage. But Dark Flare, which is honestly the worst field upgrade in the game right now. It's been memed on since the game's release. They've increased its damage from 25 to 40% of the base zombie max health per tick, so it should actually take down zombies a lot better and quicker than it has doing. And they've addressed an issue where an extra charge on field upgrades would be lost when loading into a save, which is very good news. They've made some changes to support streaks where they've addressed an issue that could cause the mutant injection to end early when near water. That's quite funny. They've addressed an issue that allowed the player to pick up a sentry turret while using mutant injection, and they've reduced the self damage from the LDBR support streak. Thank heavens, because I never use this because I'm so scared that I'm going to down myself using it. So they've reduced the self damage. I think they should just get rid of it for good, but hopefully this should now stop people from accidentally downing themselves using that. Now for save and quit, a pretty big change here is they've closed an exploit that allowed keeping a save file after it had already been loaded. So I think what this means is if you loaded in from a save and quit file, so you're back into the game, and then at any point you then Alt F4 or close the app, it would still have a temporary save created. And I think technically then you're using 2 saves on the same round. Maybe they fixed that and that's what they're meaning. But either way, they've closed an exploit that allowed you to keep a save after it had already been loaded, which if that's not how it worked and it was actually even more broken than that and you could just keep reloading a save, that's pretty broken. Now they've done some big changes to overall zombie enemies. So we'll dive into the global changes and then specifically on Terminus and Liberty Falls. They've addressed an issue where zombies charmed by brain rot could prevent the player from completing an exfil. They've addressed an issue where loading a save would disable the rampage inducer if it was active. That's a pretty big gripe, so I'm so happy that they fixed that. They've addressed an issue where zombies would throw guts at the end camera if the player leaves the match to end the game. Going into Terminus, they've addressed an issue where rarely the round would not end after killing all zombies, an issue where the amalgam could grab the player while slowed, and addressed an issue where it could pull players into walls, causing them to get stuck. And then finally, they've addressed an issue where diving while being hit by knockback from Patient 13 could push the player further than intended, potentially outside of the map. Obviously, that's not what we want to see. And then for Liberty Falls, they've addressed an issue that prevented the Abomination from spawning inside Fuller's Liberty lanes. That's a bit of a tough one for me because that was a really good trick to not have Abomination spawn the entire game if you had a certain amount of doors closed around the map. So that's pretty frustrating to see they fixed that. Obviously, that was not intended, so definitely use that whilst you still can. And they've also addressed an issue where the bomb could fire off a beam attack before leaving a spawn closet. Pretty interesting. Moving on to activities, they've addressed an issue that would prevent one elite from spawning consistently during exfil from round 16 onward. They've updated the SAM trials that required the player to not take damage to display a progress bar instead of a timer, which I think is a lot better because you could run that timer all the way down to 0 and only just make it rather than it being a progress bar. So that's fantastic. And then on Terminus, they've addressed an issue where players could use equipment, skill streaks, and fire weapons during the boat race award sequence. That's pretty hilarious. And for XP earn rates, they've actually adjusted XP. They've addressed an issue where XP was being awarded to all weapons being used in an assist instead of just the last weapon. So if 2 weapons were used in an assist only, the last one used by the players getting the assist will be awarded XP. Up till now, if a player put some damage into a zombie, then the other player finished off that zombie, they would both get the weapon XP, which I didn't know that was a thing. That's really clever. Shame that's now fixed, but technically, yeah, that's definitely not intended. And then going on to challenges, you can see there is a lot of them. They've addressed an issue where wall buys would not progress the Prestige 8 challenge value town. They addressed an issue where legendary Gobblegums would progress the Ultra Prestige 8 challenge full power instead of Ultra Gobblegums. Addressed an issue where the Liberated challenge could be completed by saving and quitting before starting the final encounter. That is to do the round 30 Liberty Falls Easter egg in under 30 minutes. They've now fixed that where saving and quitting before going to the boss fight would still let you complete it. So I'm very glad that that's fixed because that is probably one of the biggest cheeses to one of the hardest dark ops, and it's not exactly that difficult. You can definitely beat this egg in under 30 minutes legit, but they've completely solved that. And they've also fixed the dark ops for social distancing and invincible challenges by joining a game in progress. I mean, it was always going to happen, but now you won't be able to join in on a friend on round 19 to get the social distancing and the invincible challenges. And they addressed an issue that would complete Harbinger of Doom loading into a save game and using a score streak. That's kind of hilarious. I mean, as long as you get the 100 kills, right, that should make sense. But yeah, beforehand it would count regardless of how many streaks you used in order to get the 100 kills with a single score streak. So that's now fixed. They've also addressed an issue where the Prestige 5 Challenge Fire and Forget would mention needing a bombing run medal instead of a lethality medal. They addressed an issue where the player would not complete outrageous challenge until round 16 instead of round 15. They addressed an issue where loading a save past round 25 would complete the Sticks and Stones challenge. So that's to get to round 25 using only melee weapons, melee macchiato, and combat axes. And apparently you could do a load of save past that and you would immediately get that dark ops, which is crazy. And they addressed an issue where the Dark Journey challenge could show as not complete when unlocking Nebula on 33 weapons and being awarded the calling card. So a ton of dark ops nerfs and fixes there. So some things I'm sure you guys are not going to be too happy about. Now, another big thing is AFK detection. There's been a lot of God mode glitches that have been found in zombies in the last few weeks, and some where you can literally sit there AFK and you can be kniving forever and the game technically counts you still as being in the game. They've now updated the detection logic to determine if a player is AFK, and this should reduce the amount of false positive kicks in zombies for being AFK. And they've also added a warning if you're about to be kicked for being AFK to the user interface. So that's really, really good. But interesting to see if that's really going to fix a lot of the AFK God mode glitches that we've seen. I'm sure they're trying to get on top of that. Then there's a bunch of UI changes where they've updated the visuals on all the gobblegums to improve their readability, which I think is absolutely fantastic. They've addressed an issue where the boat UI would overlap with the map with the central command HUD preset. They've addressed an issue where the drop node connector prompt would overlap with the map with the central command HUD preset. They've addressed an issue where the round number would initially be displayed incorrectly when loading a save, and that would always load as round 5 and then eventually load into the round that you were in. They've addressed an issue where the weapon stats on the after action report would show the loadout players started with instead of the loadout they ended with, and addressed an issue where some items would show the wrong text on the attack map when pinged. They've removed multiplayer info from melee weapon descriptions. They've added a highest round icon to the after action report when reaching a new personal highest round. They've added a timer to the scoreboard, so that's pretty big. And they've added a notification when you pick up intel, which is great. And then something that I didn't even realize in zombies, but they've actually changed some graphic settings. So for PS4, they've addressed an issue where some effects would stop rendering at high rounds. And I actually had this happen on PC where some explosive effects just don't happen anymore past a really high round. Maybe it's just rendered in way too much. They've addressed an issue where some effects in the mutant injection were not working when sprinting. They've addressed an issue where the character effects on Brutus would be present during mutant injection. And on Liberty Falls, they addressed an issue where some damaged vehicles would not have smoke effects. And I guess that could be kind of confusing on certain consoles. And then finally, for stability, they've added numerous stability fixes, which we always love to see. They've addressed an issue where the game could crash when attempting to start a solo match after playing in split screen. And finally, they've addressed an issue where sometimes the player would be unable to save and quit with the error, the game failed to save for an unknown reason, try again later. This is something that I've seen very recently over on Twitter, and yeah, more people are getting this issue where they can't save and quit. This has now been fixed, so you should now always be able to save and quit. But across all of the nerfs and buffs we've seen to the field upgrades, the assault rifles, the launchers, the Dark Ops challenge nerfs, all of the sort of glitches and fixes that they're making to try and get rid of the AFK God mode glitches and all of that stuff. Let me know your thoughts on it all down below. It's a pretty massive set of patch notes, so really appreciate if you've made it all the way through to the end. I'm sure there's going to be some things that you're happy about, some things that you aren't happy about. Let me know either way in the comment section. Be sure to subscribe because we'll be covering everything Season 1 for Zombies when it drops tomorrow, covering all of the new assault rifle buffs and changes, as well as the new weapons that get added for Season 1. And going through everything that guided mode offers and anything else new and hidden in zombies, it'll be here on the channel. But why not watch another zombies video on your screen right now?